Hello everyone, my name is Natalia Allen and this is an informational video for parents, teachers, speech-language pathologists, other professionals, and anyone else who wants to tune into this video. I will be talking about the misrepresentation of Black students in the area of speech or language impairment and how misrepresentation can lead to this category of students to become more likely to fall into the school-to-prison pipeline. This video is based off of a literature review I recently completed as a part of my capstone project at North Carolina Central University as a graduate student in the Communication Sciences and Disorders program. This is a brief outline of what I will be covering in this presentation. First, I will begin by speaking a little about the statistics for Black youth in the juvenile justice system or prison system. Then I will talk about the misrepresentation of Black students and ways that these two topics are connected to each other. Lastly, I'll provide recommendations for the community to better support and work with Black students. It is no secret that Black or African Americans make up the majority of the prison population, but what about the youth? And how can we keep Black youth from falling into the prison system? In my investigation, I saw that youth in the juvenile justice system are overwhelmingly students or prior students with disabilities. They make up between 30 and 70% of youth in the juvenile justice system. This is a large number compared to the 8.8% of public school students with disabilities. This shows that students with disabilities are more likely to exhibit delinquent behavior and become a part of the juvenile justice system. So, when Black students are misrepresented because of their speech or language needs not being met or identified, this makes them more likely to fall into the school-to-prison pipeline. Now I'm going to move on to misrepresentation. And to misrepresent means to give a false or misleading representation of. Misrepresentation can happen in many ways, whether it is before the student becomes eligible for services to when they are being assessed. In the category of speech and language, 75% of states disproportionately represented Black students. Of this 75%, 63 were underrepresented and 14% were overrepresented. Underrepresentation and overrepresentation can have harmful repercussions on the student's future in education and outside their education as well. Students are more likely to stay in special education once they are misrepresented. When a child is overrepresented, they are receiving services, but they are services that the child does not need. This can be harmful by labeling the child as different and telling them that they need services to continue. The child may not fully understand how they are different from other students when there is no difference related to speech or language. Black students are 40% more likely to be identified with a disability than all other students, and this is mostly due to systemic racism or biases in the educational system, such as in assessments, instruction, or teacher experience with that population. When a child is underrepresented, they are not receiving services that they do need, and this can be detrimental to their growth and learning. Not being identified can cause feelings of isolation and confusion for not being able to learn or understand the material like other students do. This can cause the student to act out and it can affect their grades. On this slide, I have listed some of the factors I found in the literature that can affect how, if, or when Black students are misrepresented. These are the timing of identification, the school's access to the needed number of speech language pathologists or other professionals, the role of race, symbolic racism, and disability in the schools, the zero tolerance policy, which is the application of severe consequences such as suspensions or expulsions for any misdeed done against school policy, and lastly, the importance of safety within the schools. I won't go into much more detail about these factors, but my literature review is linked in the description for those of you interested in reading more about those. Black students are at a much higher risk of being misrepresented due to several factors, including biases in the system, within assessments, and by educators and other professionals. On this slide, I have included some facts about Black students that can lead them to becoming incarcerated. First, students who are suspended or expelled are more likely to be held back, drop out, or enter the juvenile justice system. With that said, Black students are 3 times more likely to be suspended or expelled than their white peers. Graduation rates are lower for Black, Hispanic, and Native students with disabilities. Lastly, Black males from low-income backgrounds receiving services are suspended at the highest rate of any subgroup. As I mentioned previously, youth in the juvenile justice system are overwhelmingly students or prior students with disabilities. The school-to-prison pipeline begins with the misrepresentation of Black students, because if their speech or language needs are not being met or identified, this makes them more likely to be in the juvenile justice system. The failure of the education system to meet their needs is what causes Black students every day to be criminalized for actions that can be resolved by fixing the system. In order to enact change, all members of the community need to be a part of these changes. One way change can happen is with speech language pathologists or SLPs and other related professionals such as special education teachers. These professionals need to ensure that they are aware of the impact of culture on speech, language, and behavior. Many standardized tests are normed on white students, which does not take into account the experience of other culturally diverse students. By doing this, we can make sure that students are not overrepresented because of a dialectal or cultural difference. SLPs should also provide interventions that are relevant to the students' experiences. Being aware and proactive in the diagnosis and therapy of Black students can decrease the rate of them being misrepresented. The number of SLPs, special educators, and other professionals that are available, especially in low socioeconomic areas, can affect the students. Professionals can easily get overwhelmed by caseload numbers and expectations from school systems, and the school system should take into consideration this impact. Although a student may be receiving services, it is important that the services are actually helping the student by putting them and their educational needs first. More speech-language pathologists, special educators, and support staff are needed, along with realistic expectations that are accommodating for both educator and student. Another way to enact change is for families and caregivers to play an active role in their students' school experience. It is the right of the parents or caregivers to understand exactly what is going on with the student at school. Along with this includes education. The family and community should be more educated about the meaning of disorders or diagnoses and how the child can be helped at school. So if you are a parent or family member, I highly encourage you to get on the internet and look up definitions of anything you don't understand and ask their teachers questions, because they can either provide some insight or at least point you in the right direction. I also think that schools should provide formal and informal ways of providing information to families. These can be in the form of brochures, monthly newsletters, and monthly or yearly meetings about the importance of identification and receiving services for students who need it. Meetings are where questions can be answered and parents can meet other parents who are in the same position. Or they can meet parents who already have a child or children with diagnosis who are receiving services. When the topic of disorders or disabilities is mentioned, this can make the family feel isolated with the new information. So creating community can be beneficial for the families. Parents and caregivers should remain involved in their students' care as much as possible. Working on their goals at home and at school can ensure carryover in both settings. Lastly, the policies and practices within the schools require change. The zero tolerance policy is one that does not take into account the individual person and their background. Just as a judge takes into account remorse or remediation, school faculty should look at each student as individuals. When students with disabilities are found to be in violation of this policy, there is a chance they will not receive services that they need and also be more susceptible to going to the juvenile justice system or prison. I want to end this video by stressing that the characteristics of the individual are very important factors in how they experience the world. Race and disability cannot be overlooked or generalized because having disregard for them can cause people to make decisions that are harmful without even realizing. Misrepresentation of Black students has an impact on the student and their outlook on life, whether they are under or overrepresented. Black students and Black students with disorders or disabilities are statistically more likely to fall into the school-to-prison pipeline, and it is the responsibility of the community to be proactive and try to support this population so that they are accurately represented. Thank you for tuning into my video, and I hope this has given someone some insight into the necessity of change. I've also included my references on this slide and this slide. And that is the end of my video. Thank you for tuning in.